So thanks everybody for joining us on our Hangout for using LinkedIn. I have three guests here with me today. I have Arent, Paula, and Tang. I'm just going to have them introduce themselves first, and we'll just start with Arent.
Sure, thanks, Christine. My name is Arent. I am a diversity recruitment consultant for the City of Edmonton. And I actually do campus recruiting as well as support our Newcomers to Canada portfolio.
Okay. So thanks. So Paula, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paula Wishoff-Urama, and I'm a certified career development professional. I have a private practice called Career Designs for Life, and I'm also the executive director of the Career Development Association of Alberta.
Okay. And I just want to mention for people who are watching that Paula actually joined us on another Hangout last summer where we talked about career tests and career testing. So thank you for coming back as a repeat guest. So Tang, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Tang Choi. I'm a career consultant at Ryerson University, and I work very closely with students during one-to-one sessions and group sessions as well. And I'm very passionate about helping students with their personal brand and utilizing social media to help with that. And I did launch the LinkedIn Profile Advising program here at Ryerson.
Okay, and I also want to mention too that Tang has also been on another Hangout with us as well. She helped us on how to use and navigate Twitter, and at the end of that Hangout she said if we did something on using LinkedIn to have her back, and so I took advantage of her.
Yes, so thank you.
She came back, also because she is a LinkedIn expert, so we're grateful to have you all here. So if I could start by just asking you, can you tell me about how you use LinkedIn? And we'll just start with Paula. Oh, so Paula, did you want to? Oh, did we lose Paula?
No, I'm here. Sorry, I caught only a small portion of what you were saying, so I'm good. So how do I use LinkedIn?
Yeah, can you tell me about how you use LinkedIn?
Sure. So as a professional for my own career, I use LinkedIn to connect with my colleagues primarily, and also to share information and resources about the Career Development Association of Alberta. As a career practitioner with the clients that I work with, I really help them to find people that they can connect with to do informational interviews, connect with discussion groups that might be a great source of networking or resources or information for them, and also to help people present themselves to the world of work and potential employers or recruiters or network contacts in a professional way.
Okay. So, Arent, can you tell us about how you use LinkedIn?
Yeah. So I use LinkedIn actually to connect with students. So on the other side of what you do, Tang, I have created a LinkedIn campus group for the City of Edmonton. So I use it for a few reasons. One, to share the jobs we have for students. Two, to share tips in the workforce, not only for the City of Edmonton, but just in general. And then tips on how to apply and get successful at the City of Edmonton. And I started to use it to share what it's like actually to be a student. So we're going to start doing testimonials similarly to what we do on some other social media platforms as more of an attraction tool. And I do use it for myself as well. I have a fairly full LinkedIn profile, and I use that to connect with people who are interested in the city itself, or if you're a student, by way of coming to my profile and then having them join our group.
Okay. And Tang.
So for myself, I definitely like using the platform to help set up a professional online presence, and definitely through the work that I do. Yes, it's for myself so that I can also network using the platform with professionals in the field, but it's also a way to start to model this behavior for the clients I'm working with. So when I am setting up my LinkedIn platform, just trying to make sure that I'm hitting all the 7 requirements, that it is complete, it's filled out, that it acts as a basis for the clients I'm working with to use as just an example to review. And another way that I am using LinkedIn is definitely for networking, staying in touch with the contacts that I meet so that I can keep in touch with them throughout the year as the years go by. And in addition is definitely to stay up to date with industry news and to see what's happening with my contacts as well.
Okay. So two of you have mentioned that you ran LinkedIn groups. Are you okay with me putting up the links to those groups in the comments? Okay. So yeah, if there's a problem, just send me a message saying, just refer to me directly or check out my Twitter, and that's what I'll work with. But just so people can get another resource, that would be helpful. So some people think of LinkedIn as just an online resume, but what other uses have you made of for LinkedIn? And we'll start with Tang again.
Well, from a student perspective, definitely networking is very huge. So once you have set up a very strong LinkedIn profile online, I definitely highly encourage individuals to utilize the platform further to really maximize it by starting to see, well, who are you currently connected to and who might they be connected to that perhaps you can reach out to, just because LinkedIn does utilize the degrees of separation. So you'll see the little numbers beside each of the photos, and just to give a bit of background info on that, a 1 beside someone's image means that you're connected to them or they're your friend. A 2 means that it's a friend of a friend. And 3 means that there's two people in between you and that contact. A second degree connection is not too far away. So I definitely suggest individuals to see who your mutual contact is so that you can perhaps reach out to them and create a new contact for yourself, whether or not you are job seeking or not at the current time.
Okay. And Paula, what do you think about people who just tell you it's an online resume?
I tell them that that's the last thing they should be using it for, is as an online resume. Really, the first reason to be connected on LinkedIn, as far as I'm concerned, is really for that networking and for that relationship building. And so having people use it to research different organizations, maybe a little bit more about what they're about, the kinds of projects that they're involved in, some of the types of people that are working in those organizations, so that they can get a really good sense of whether or not that organization or a particular industry or a particular type of work is something that might be a good fit for them. And then to connect with some of those people and have some personal conversations to make sure that they're really engaged and connected to the information that's out there so that they can make good decisions.
And Erin, what do you say to the online resume?
Yeah, I'll just echo what you two had mentioned. I know I give that same advice to students. What I often see students doing with me, which I think is completely acceptable, is I'm a recruitment consultant, so I'm not always the person doing all the hiring. So sometimes what they do is actually ask me to connect them to our actual hiring managers or direct supervisors. So in addition to networking and researching companies, I think that's a great way, if you can link in with a recruiter to ask them for some more networking people to connect with.
So in fact, I just want to give one piece of advice to people who are watching. If you want to make much stronger use of your LinkedIn profile, just go and change your URL to the vanity one, so it actually has your name in there and not a whole list of numbers, and that's something you can just put up on your resume. So that's just one tip I just want to suggest to people to start using it in your network. So are there any additional tools that you use on LinkedIn that you think our viewers can also use? And I'll start with Erin this time.
I think one of the best tools, and we'll get to it in a little bit, is true recommendations. I find, whether it's connecting with someone or asking for a recommendation, the best way to actually get that is to send a true message to them, not the text automatic message that you can send to someone saying, hey, can you recommend me? But I found really great results through sending really personalized messages to people, reminding them of either when we've connected, whether it was at a conference, brunch, or a project we've actually worked on, and said, hey, do you remember this? Would you mind recommending me? And there's no harm in actually being really specific with what you would like them to recommend you for. I think that's a really great tool, and all of the text boxes, especially your summary at the very top of the LinkedIn, is actually searchable by headhunters and recruiters. So those are two really important tools, I think, that students should know about. And why you want to actually ask for them to recommend you in really specific ways is that searchable as well.
Okay.
A few tips and 2 tools that I would recommend.
Okay, thank you. So Paula, what would you, any additional tools you'd recommend on LinkedIn?
Sure, recommendations are huge. I definitely echo what Erin had to say about that. And I think another one that's really helpful is, from a research perspective, is the jobs. So looking at different job ads, seeing what's out there, what employers are looking for. Not necessarily that you're going to apply directly to those positions as they're listed, but that you can start to get a sense of what employers are looking for, what some different job titles are, what kinds of organizations are hiring, so that you can really target your profile for a particular industry, or so that you can target your job search a little bit more specifically. Another one would be the discussion groups. I find there's such immense benefit in being connected with other people in, that have similar interests in whatever area that might be, just to have those opportunities for conversations and for connecting and sharing information. So those two would be the ones that I would definitely highlight for folks that are looking for work.
Okay, and Tang.
So two other features I'd add to what's already been mentioned would be the Find Alumni feature. So we've touched a lot about research, also networking, and under the connections header, there is another feature called Find Alumni, and you can actually start to search alumni from where you have studied at or are currently studying at, based on where it is that they live, what they do, and that can start to create potential more contacts that you might consider looking into further, reviewing their profiles, or potentially reaching out to and creating that new tie. So definitely Find Alumni is a neat feature in addition to the groups that Paula had mentioned as well. And something else I would mention too is the long form publishing feature. So sometimes when I am working with clients, especially with students, something that they mention is that they might not have the experience yet in the field, but they want to showcase that they have the knowledge that employer might be looking for. And with this long form publishing feature, it's very much like a blog post that you can create, and you'll see if you are connected to some individuals, you may have seen some of these, sorry about that, come out already, and you can also publish your own posts as well and showcase the knowledge you have in the area that you're currently studying.
Yeah, I read the long form post a lot. One tip I would mention if you want to write a long form post is tell your friends you posted it out there and get them to like it, which just helps move it up in the ranking on LinkedIn. So what do you like to see in a person's LinkedIn profile? And let's start with Paula.
Sure. So I usually go first to recommendations. I don't know. I like to see what other people have to say about individuals, and it's always great to get that kind of more personal connection from the perspective of someone else. When it's just our information on our profiles, we can basically say whatever we want, but it's nice to have that corroboration from other people. So I really like those recommendations. I think they really help to support what the individual is saying about themselves and what they have done in the past and what they're looking to do in the future. And the other thing that I look at is to see the groups that they're connected to and how active they've been. If they've set up a profile, and it might be a great profile, but they've done absolutely nothing on LinkedIn for months and months and months, that's really very telling. So their level of activity, their recommendations, and the groups that they're connected to would be the three things that I would look for first.
Okay. So, Tang, what do you like to see in a person's profile?
Well, I like to see a complete profile to begin with. In a complete profile, there are, just maybe as a recap for everyone that's tuning in, there are 7 parameters that LinkedIn will measure you by, so that little circle on the side will reach to an all-star level, and that's the highest that you can get. And when you do reach that level, you are 40 times more likely to receive opportunities according to LinkedIn. And those 7 parameters that you're really aiming for are going to be your photo, your industry and location, your skills, and you do need to have a minimum of 3 filled out. However, you can fill up to 50, and as well your current position and description, 2 previous positions, and your education, and a minimum of 50 contacts. So once you fill those parameters out, you will reach LinkedIn's all-star level. However, there are definitely other sections you can fill out as well to augment and to complete your profile further, but that's definitely something that I look out for right away when I look at someone's LinkedIn presence.
Okay. And Erin, what do you like to see in a person's profile?
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to what you said, Paula, recommendations are really big for me. As well, I actually look at some of the attachments that they have if they've done project work. For campus recruiting, we recognize that not a lot of students will have a ton of experience, but they will have a lot of relevant project work, especially on campus. So I always recommend that if there's no security breaches, to attach any projects that they've worked on so I can view those. As well, in terms of actual interactions, like Paula was mentioning, those who interact on my LinkedIn group, I tend to look at their profile more, and therefore by seeing their name more often when I'm actually screening resumes, that is more resounding to me than someone I've never heard of before. So those interactions really do make a big impact when I'm screening through our applicant tracking platform.
So what sections do you focus on when reviewing a person's LinkedIn profile? Let's start with Tang.
Well, a lot of the sections that we'll look at, we look at the entire profile, but the main ones are often mirroring what recruiters are looking for. So recruiters, their eyes naturally will go to your headline, which is that line right underneath your name, your photo, and your summary. So a lot of times within the first few seconds, that's where our eyes will go to naturally. So those are areas that we'll look at a bit more in depth. And definitely for the photo, we do want to make sure it's a professional looking image. It's not something you cropped out of anywhere. And I would usually even suggest that you're using a DSLR camera, high quality image for that. Your headline, making sure that you're maximizing that 120 character limit that you have. A lot of times I see that people just put their current role and where they're working. And that's definitely okay because it gives someone an idea of what it is that you're involved in. But I do suggest that you maximize that 120 character limit. So put in more keywords, put in other areas that you specialize in as well. And those keywords are going to be key for your profile to turn up in search results. So for Arent to be able to find you, often recruiters are using keywords to do searches, and that's something that you want to think about when you're filling out your profile. And that leads us to the summary, where definitely you want to give that overview of your experience, putting in lots of keywords and highlighting your achievements in the field to date.
Okay. Just briefly before we move on to the next, I just want to mention at this point, because you brought up keywords, I'm not nagging people about their spelling, but I just want to remind you that if you misspell something and it's a keyword and they go to search you, they can't find you because you misspelled the keyword. So we tell people again and again about spelling, but it is really important, and I do see spelling errors crop up, and when it is a keyword that's important to your job search, make the effort to make sure that they're all correct. Not just from the perspective of the employer saying, oh, this person can't spell, but you won't pop up in searches if you didn't use the right spelling of your keyword, just as a note for people. So Arent, what do you like to see in a person's LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, I look straight to, the things that you had mentioned, Tang. And just to quickly touch on the keywords, a tip for students is actually researching and looking at postings for organizations that they want to look for or want to work at, because some of the more common used words are different in different organizations. So for example, some people call human resources people potential, and some people call recruitment talent acquisition. So what does that look like as a company that you're looking for? So I look at all the things that Tang had mentioned. I also look for, and this is a tip for LinkedIn and resumes, but I look for not only the duties you've done in an organization, but also the results you've driven. So I almost recommend that students split it up, kind of how I have on mine. So I actually list, what a day in the life of Nick look like, and then any special projects I've worked on, any additional committees I've worked on, and really tangible results. So say a student has done presentations or projects, scope that out. So I ask them, how many people were in the room with you, and actually to quantify that in the results on their page. There is a limit of text within every job that you've had, so you do have to cater that a little bit. But I look for those, really well-rounded, full, complete text box there for their past experience. And because they may have been doing more administrative work, when you're on a co-op or summer term, there are so many opportunities to get involved and volunteer, so that's your time to show. And I look for that. I say, somebody can go and just do clerical work for a company, or they can do that and volunteer for parades, or volunteer for fundraisers, or Habitat for Humanity. And those are those extra pieces that organizations are looking for.
So what sections do you focus on, Paula?
I definitely echo everything that the other ladies have said. I certainly look at all of those. One thing that I really look for a little bit beyond the profile is the activity. What kinds of things have they posted recently? What kinds of things have they favorited, liked, commented on? Just to get a sense of their level of engagement. I think that that's a really important piece of the LinkedIn profile. It's one thing to go and put all of that information online and have it accessible. It's another thing to be really working with it and using it. So in addition to all of the things that Tang and Arent had mentioned, I definitely would look for that activity.
Okay. So what do you think a person could, do you think a person could include too much information in their profile? And I'll start with Arent.
I would say yes and no. I think for me, and this is really opinion-based, and that's the same thing for resumes, is, a lot of people say 1 or 2 pages per resume. I tend to agree, but I say, especially for campus, the more you can put, sometimes the better, but I don't mean in terms of text and length on your bullets, but how complete can you be in broadening out what you're sharing, similar to what I just mentioned around volunteer work. And those extracurricular things, projects, anything you've done on campus or you're part of clubs. I look for that when I'm talking about threats. You could potentially add too much information in certain sections, but that's why obviously we have the limit and cap in some of the text boxes. So I would say venture to go more than less, and that's just my opinion.
And Paula, do you think there could be too much on a profile?
Yeah, I do. I think that you really want LinkedIn to be a place where people kind of get that first impression and develop enough interest that they want to have a future conversation with you. So I kind of link you a little bit to an online dating profile. You're not going to put all of your information on your online dating profile. You want to highlight the really key important things that are going to get people to say, oh, this person's really interesting. I'd like to get to know them a little bit better. And so I think when you put all of your information down there, it can be really easy for someone to say, oh, well, what more could I possibly need to know? Everything's here. I'm not necessarily going to reach out to that individual. So the information that you include on your profile, you want to make sure that it's current, that it's relevant, and that it's meaningful to the people that you're wanting to see that information, and not that it's just the bucket list of anything and everything that you've ever done.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The bucket list point is important. And Tang, what do you think about too much info?
Yes, I think that there is a possibility to put too much information on there, especially as you start to gain more related or relevant industry experience. So sometimes for students right now, the challenge is that they may not have as much experience to put on, and then in that case we are starting to put on current positions, even if they are part-time and not as related as the industry, so we'll focus more on transferable skills from that standpoint then. However, as you do start to gain more experience, maybe you can start to drop off some of those part-time positions or those roles that aren't as related to your industry target, and for some of the positions where you still want to keep on because maybe they were within the last few years, if they're not as related, you might not put as many bullets under them, or you might only have 1 point under that position. That's always a possibility as well, to give yourself credit. But I do agree with both Arent and Paula that you do run the risk of putting on way too much information if you list every single thing you've done. And something that I would point out too is that you want to make sure your information is accessible mobile as well. LinkedIn has received a lot of mobile traffic. Actually, I was trying to find the stat beforehand, but I think it was like 45% or so or higher now. Their traffic in terms of individuals accessing their site is through mobile. So you want to make sure your information is mobile friendly as well.
That's actually very helpful. It's a very important point for people to keep in mind. Do you think a person could just copy their resume over to their LinkedIn profile? Let's just go with Paula with that one to start.
Sure. I think that you do yourself a huge disservice if that's all you do. if you've got a resume and the same information is on your LinkedIn profile, I don't think that that's a huge benefit to yourself as a job seeker, for sure. I think that you want to make sure that there's those highlights in the profile, but that your resume is really targeted and tailored to the specific position, industry, organization that you're applying to. And it's really difficult to do that in a LinkedIn profile. You want to make sure that it's kind of covers over enough of the experience, qualifications that you have that it's going to get looked at by potential employers, but it can't possibly be specific to every single position that you're going to be applying for, and that targeting your resume piece is so important. So I think that, you know, you definitely want to keep that LinkedIn profile professional and generic enough that it's going to get some good reach, and then that your resume becomes a more targeted piece of information that you would follow up with an employer on.
I like that distinction, the idea that LinkedIn can be more broadcast, more general, and then the resume is directly to that person. I like that idea. I think that's a really important point for people to think about. So Erin, do you think that you should just copy over your resume?
No, I tend to agree with Paula that you know, there's certain information that you want to have on a resume that's specifically catered to a job you're applying for. And that being said, I think if, you know, if people are looking at a few different industries, that tends to make it difficult if you have a LinkedIn profile. But I always recommend for people to, you know, always look at their goals and try to figure out at least one particular industry, so that, yes, Paula, they are really specific on the resume, but that it looks like they're targeting something on their LinkedIn profile, because they're going to be using those certain keywords anyways. So I would say no, don't copy and paste from your resume. There are many different tools that you can use on your LinkedIn profile that can actually be above and beyond what your resume looks like. So yeah, just, I would say use as much specific information as you can for the industry, but if you are looking at a few others like Paula had mentioned, try to make it a little bit more general, but with your goals in mind.
Okay, and Tang, what do you think about just copying it over?
I would also echo the thoughts that have already been said, and I would say no, we're not copying the resume over word for word completely. However, we are going to pull the main highlights and ensure that we're hitting a lot of keywords from the field. So I do just want to clarify for everyone that's tuning in, when we say general, we're meaning that we're keeping it general to the industry that you're targeting. Just because even within your industry, there's going to be a lot of different niche pockets that you can specialize in, and if you do want to have higher reach on LinkedIn so that your presence, your professional profile comes up, you want to hit more keywords from the industry that you're targeting. The other thing that I would say that's a bit different from LinkedIn and the resume is that it does allow you to start to touch upon other areas you're interested in. So that's a nice thing about LinkedIn, is that sometimes I get clients who maybe it's a marketing student I'm working with. On the side, they do photography. And on a link and on a resume, when you're really tailoring for that marketing position, sometimes that photography interest falls to the wayside, whereas on LinkedIn you can definitely have that one profile. So I suggest only having one profile, not two, where you can start to illustrate that you do have a marketing specialization, but you also have a photography business on the side. And again, that's just an example, but LinkedIn really allows you to merge your different interests and create that brand for yourself online.
I really agree with that point. I think we've sort of students might not be ready to focus yet because they don't have enough experience, so LinkedIn gives them a chance to talk about all of the breadth that they'd have, but when they go to apply, that they should have something really targeted. And I think all three of you have made that point really clear, that we were worried about too much information, but what we're concerned about is making sure that it all fits in with your industry and you're sharing appropriately what you need. So do recommendations have an impact on a person's profile? I think we've talked a little bit about this, but the other feature I wanted to talk about, which has a little bit to do with recommendations that I get confused questions about, is endorsements. So if you want to address recommendations or to talk about the endorsements and if they make an impact, either one would be fine for this one. So let's start with Erin for this one.
Sure. To be quite honest, I don't overly look at endorsements as much is I look at the true recommendations. I look at endorsements to see generally what they have valued as their skills, and then if other people have also agreed. I think we can see that there is a tool to endorse someone quite quickly at the top of your page, and people tend to click it just so that it goes off of their page. And so what I look at is the true recommendations. And, you know, I gave the tip around really having a personalized approach when asking for that, and asking for, you know, what you'd like that person to touch on and say. I think that's the most important thing, especially when you're looking at, you know, a particular industry, and even if you're looking at transferable skills. So, you know, I always use my part-time examples when I, you know, was on campus and I say worked at Panago Pizza. If I had that on my LinkedIn profile, which I don't anymore because it's no longer relevant, but if I was still in campus, I would ask my manager to say, could you recommend me for my hiring and training, because I'm taking human resources in university and that's what I'm looking to highlight. And so they could have shared, you know, really general piece of information that wouldn't have been relevant to me. However, if I really ask them to highlight what I'm going to be putting as a transferable skill, they're going to go ahead and do that. And if you actually ask them for information, similarly to a reference letter, it's easier for them to be able to go and do it, and it's less work for them if you kind of plug in some of the info that you want to say.
Sorry about that. I have it fighting with me. So, Tang, so what do you think about recommendations or endorsements?
I definitely think that recommendations do carry more weight typically than endorsements do, and I think we heard it straight from Arent, who is a recruiter, in terms of her views on that. And my standpoint as a career consultant is when I'm looking at recommendations, you have someone else validating what you're already saying on your profile. So on our profile, we can make ourselves sound as awesome as possible, but when you really start to get those recommendations under key positions you've held, that really starts to kind of reinforce that message that you're expressing through your own branding and your own profile, and someone's actually taken the effort to write out a nice message for you. For endorsements, I'm sorry, I'm having issues with my earphones here. For endorsements, like Arent said already, they're often not viewed as closely by recruiters, just from many articles that I've read as well from other recruiters who back this mentality. And the reason for that is just because there's lots of ways to game the system. You can get friends to click that you have that skill, and like Arent had mentioned as well, often LinkedIn will have like a little prompt at the top asking if that person has that skill, and it's easier for someone just to click because they're there. With that said, though, it definitely does have a bit of a wow factor if you do have a lot of endorsements. So I can't negate that. If you do have individuals who are endorsing you, your top 10 skills will go to the forefront, and a lot of people do take a quick glance at that still. So recommendations still your strongest bet, but endorsements, it's a nice to have. Not the most accurate, but nice to have.
Yeah. And what do you think about recommendations or endorsements, Paula?
I echo absolutely everything the ladies have said. I think that the recommendations really are that personal validation of the skills and abilities that you have for a particular position or in a particular industry. The endorsements, I think, as Tang had mentioned, are helpful. They do certainly show kind of a quick visual of skills that you might have. I think the challenge with that is that they may not always be skills that you want to use moving forward, and they may not be skills that you feel completely confident that you have as well. And so I think there's some endorsement management that you need to do, because people will click. It's easy to click, and I think that you want to make sure that whatever is showing up in that endorsement list is really accurate for who you are, what you feel comfortable with, and what skills you want to be using moving forward. And so if you're not managing that, the perception might be from someone looking at that profile, even if they're not taking a lot of stock in those endorsements, is that they might look at that and say, oh, well, this person can do this particular thing, make some assumptions about your profile, and then perhaps you have to let them down in a personal conversation if you don't meet or match what is showing up on your profile, and that can be a real detriment to you as a job seeker.
Yeah, this is just my guess, but I think that LinkedIn came up with endorsements because there were people who were really active on the site, and they could encourage activity amongst their less active users on LinkedIn by clicking an endorsement for them. And so then you get the message you've been endorsed, you go back, you play around on your LinkedIn profile. So my guess was endorsements was meant to activate users that were a bit more passive. That's my guess. And I also think people have mentioned here that sometimes endorsements, when there's lots of them, can have an impact. So some of the ones that we look for where there's lots of them is if you have a lot of endorsements for public speaking, if you have computer languages, and the person might not have enough information to recommend you, but they want to endorse you for stuff like that. So I kind of think when Paula talks about endorsement management, those are some of the things you could look for. So what are these really important skills that you need to have for what you want to do, and try to get people to give you endorsements for those. That's just a suggestion that I would have on there. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to say about that section before we move on?
I guess I would just add, those tuning in might have questions about, well, what do you mean by management? Do I just tell people not to click on it? When I'm glad Paula mentioned it, because you can, under your skills section, there is an edit feature where you can go in and you can actually uncheck people who have endorsed you for a certain skill so that you can bring that number lower, or maybe you just don't want that person showing up beside that skill. So there is a way to manage that. So just as a clarification.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So do you have any tips or suggestions on how people can make more connections? And let's start with Tang again for this one.
Well, ways to start to expand the connection base. I would highly suggest to utilize the group feature some more if you're looking to grow your network, especially using LinkedIn, is to utilize the groups and discussions. Start contributing. Pick a few of them, a manageable number, whether it's one or two or three groups that you really want to focus on, and you'll make an effort to go into it on a weekly basis to comment, like, share links as well. And through those engagements, people will start to recognize you. As Paula had started to mention, she goes in and looks at certain groups, and you can start to grow your base and add contacts that way, and that gives you a bit of a warm lead as opposed to adding someone who you have not connected to at any way. That is still a strategy too, is if you don't have any connections with someone and you are looking to introduce yourself, that's going to be more of a prospecting or introductory message, which is definitely okay as well, but we do know that when you have a warm lead, it increases the likelihood that that person will connect with you. If you are connecting with someone who you're prospecting, you have never reached out to this individual before, try to find something that you share in common with this individual. Take a look through their profile. Maybe they're an alumni of U of A, or maybe they are working on a project or initiative that you're very interested in as well. And you might start to indicate that you share that similarity, and also express why it is that you're reaching out to them. And also remember to close your messages with a call to action. So in an intro message, we're not asking for a job right away. In an intro message, you're really utilizing that as an opportunity to connect and to stay in touch. So leveraging those groups, I also suggest to share your knowledge, expertise, publish those long form posts, share updates. Those are ways to expand your reach, so that if you publish a long form post, people can find you. If it becomes viral or it starts to spread, they may follow you, they may reach out to you to start to connect with you. And I've focused a lot more on the online component, but definitely when you meet with individuals in person, add them on LinkedIn within a day or two, and that's going to help you grow your network.
Okay. I liked your comment about prospecting, and also I want to reach back to your comment that you made about having an all-star profile.
Mm-hmm.
When people I don't know reach out to me on LinkedIn and they don't have a complete profile, I am less likely to accept the connection. So I just want to urge people to follow Tang's advice about filling out your profile, especially if you're trying to use it to network and make more connections. It's really hard to make a decision about somebody without enough information. Mm-hmm. So Paula, how would you recommend people get more connections?
I absolutely agree with everything that Tang said. That was fabulous. I think that certainly those in-person connections and asking permission, are you on LinkedIn? Would you like to connect? I'd love to be able to stay in touch with you. I find LinkedIn is such a great way to keep connected. I find much more efficient than, trying to remember email addresses and phone numbers and getting them in your contact list and then losing them. It's easy to search. It's easy to find people. And so those personal connections that you've already made using LinkedIn as a way to stay connected, I think is really important. And certainly one of the things that you mentioned, Christine, about, when people are asking to connect with you, depending on what their profile status is, I get some extremely bizarre requests from extremely bizarre places to connect with people. And if there's any kind of hesitation on my part, I'm just not going to connect with them. There needs to be, I think, some purpose for connecting. If you're just connecting to get more people on your LinkedIn profile, that's not a good reason to be connecting with people. There needs to be a purpose. So sharing those common interests, being part of a similar group, wanting to connect for more information about a particular industry or organization or position, those are all really valid reasons. From a collegial perspective, staying in touch with colleagues, other professionals, those kinds of things, those would be really great reasons to connect. And I think, kind of the primary reason that you should be using LinkedIn.
Okay. I want to ask a very directed question about making connections for Erin, because she's our real live HR person. If I approach you at a recruitment event of some type and this is our first meeting, is it appropriate for me to just say, can we connect on LinkedIn? What do you feel about that, and is there a way to ask that you feel is okay, or do you advise them not to?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I was actually going to share that I believe LinkedIn is just a platform and it's a launching off point from real life connections and real life interactions. So I would say yes. My advice is always to spark a connection, and I mean, this is just because you genuinely want to get to know about my organization and about me, and not what I look for. So if somebody comes up to me in a career firm or event, I would look for someone who's looking to engage genuinely first, and then for that to be the closeout of a conversation. I only accept people who I recognize through the picture and that conversation. So to the lady's point, make sure you have a picture that's professional and I can see your face. If you do not have a personalized message and I do not recognize your face, I will not add you back. So those are the two biggest things that I say. If you're, I would say, cold reaching out to me over LinkedIn, I want to know what you're looking for, similar to Tang's point. What's my call to action? Are you looking to learn about the city, or do you want to speak with someone else? And that's great. I can't assume why you're connecting with me, and if it's not for something in particular, I don't like to have too many connections with no true interaction. So there's that piece if you're just going through the LinkedIn profile and a social media platform. And if you are looking to then connect and reconnect from an in-person contact, recommendations I have are, like the lady said, right away after you've met them, let them know that you are going to be adding them on LinkedIn so that person can be expecting you. And make sure that your picture is up to date so that they can remember who you were when you saw them in person. There's lots of networking events, and I think LinkedIn is a really great platform to connect with people. But if you, say, go to a conference, oftentimes there will be a delegate list at the end of your package. Not everybody has business cards anymore. It might be a dying breed, I'm not sure. But what I even do is just star the people that I've made connections with, and maybe a little something about them that we talked about on the back of my page. And then when I go back to the office, I'll add them all, give them a little note, remind them about our conversation. And I do that the first day that I get back. And I recommend that for students as well, whether it's after a career fair or if your school or your faculty have a conference or a mixer or something like that.
I just want to mention about the photograph, Erin has brought this up and also Tang has brought this up, and one of the tips we give to the people who come in for our LinkedIn consultations is that if I was wandering around in a dark room with my cell phone out and had your LinkedIn profile up, could I tell it was you by your picture? That's usually what we suggest to people. So if the picture's reflective of something that you do or things like that, just make sure that I can still determine who you are if I'm having a cold meeting with you. I don't know if anybody else has any other suggestions about the photograph and making yourself recognizable, because that seems to have been, I'm going to remember you as I saw you.
I usually suggest that it's a clean headshot. Sometimes what you'll start to see is people add like their torso in there as well, and like you really just need like a bit of your shoulder, top portion of your shoulder, and your head. And the other tip I would give is just maybe angle your body slightly as well, or angle your head slightly, just so that it's not a straight dead-on headshot where it looks a bit passport-like. And being conscious of what it is that you're wearing. So like Christine had mentioned, depending on your field. You might not be wearing a blazer or the tie or whatever it might be. It really is dependent on your industry, what's professional in your industry, and being conscious of your background, so that I usually suggest nothing overly busy or overly dark.
Okay. Any other comments about the photograph before we move on? Okay. Are there any underused features on LinkedIn that you think job seekers could make more use of? And we'll start with Paula for this one.
Oh, sure. Catch me off guard on this one. I think that oftentimes people underestimate the value of the discussion groups and really getting engaged in them. I know lots of people that I talk with say, well, what's the point? What value is there? I don't have time to deal with that. And so I often tell them that if they're spending any amount of time on Facebook or surfing the net, they have time to be in discussion groups and really being active there. It's one thing to be a part of those groups. It really is something else to be engaged in those conversations, to be posing questions or sharing information, or even just reading and contributing to comments. It does so much for an individual's level of confidence, especially in a particular industry, if they're wanting to showcase that they are connected and committed to that particular area or field. And it really does help to portray you as a professional, as someone who can be trusted and who is respected and who adds value. Now, of course, if you're a group troublemaker, that's not going to be very helpful. But if you're in there, if you're really there from an authentic and genuine perspective to contribute and to gain information and resources, I think that it is hugely beneficial and something that everyone really needs to be connected with.
Yeah. So, Erin, what do you think people aren't making the most use of?
Yeah, I would say a few of our points. The biggest thing for me is keywords and their summary. So what they're about, what they're looking for, what they're up to, what their goals are, so that I can get a really good idea on who they are. That summary to me is almost like a first question in an interview. So I would say, so why the city of Edmonton? Or why whatever organization you're applying for? To me, I love personal connection, and I really want that to be genuine and authentic in what you're about. And then to Paula's point about interactions in groups and different discussion forums, I would say same thing. So we are right now just in the process of building out our user base and our group platform. But the best interactions I see are those that aren't always directly linked to I've applied on a job, help me figure out where I'm at in the process, but they're more so engaging about the organization itself. So questions about the city, where's the LRT at? Different things that are truly in interest to our organization, as opposed to just interest about short-term getting a job right now. Those are the things that I look for, and I've actually recommend people who have then reached out to me and said I've applied on a job that isn't my position that I'm hiring for, and through the interactions that I've seen on my campus group, I've recommended them to the recruiter themselves to at least look at their resume. So it does make a difference.
Okay. And Tang, is there anything that you think people aren't making the best use of?
I'll touch on two new points that haven't been brought up yet, and that would be the relationship feature and also adding media. So maybe we'll start off with the adding media because it's a bit quicker. With the adding media, it's been brought up a bit already during this hangout, but under your summary, under the positions you've held, you can attach PowerPoints, Prezi presentations, documents, and these photos as well. And these are all ways to develop that brand further, especially if you are in a more creative industry where it's very visual as well. These are fantastic ways to showcase some of your work. But even for others who aren't in as much of a visual field, they are ways to showcase your knowledge some more as well, depending on what it is that you attach. The other thing that I'll point out is this relationship feature, where if you go into a contact that you are connected to, you'll notice under their main header or summary section, there's going to be a relationship tab. And I highly suggest that you utilize this tab to help you curate your contacts. So you can add memos to yourselves or notes in terms of, oh, where was it that I met Tang? Or maybe you want to set a reminder for yourself to reach out to this person in a month, in a few weeks again, and you can also set tags as well. So let's say you do start meeting more people in your industry and you want to start to tag them. Maybe I want to tag them as in the petroleum industry, or this is a recruiter that I've met, so that when you start to do searches through your own contacts, you're going to be able to pull up all these individuals within your contact base much more easily. So this is all information that's just for you. No one else can see it under this relationship tab. It is private, so it's a really great place to just kind of keep little memos for yourself in terms of those core contacts that you've made. So leverage that relationship feature and also add media to your positions and to your summary.
I really like that you mentioned that with the relationship builder, because I also think it ties in with what Erin said when following up with people after you meet them somewhere. So then you can go into LinkedIn and you can write down, did I send them an email message, how I would know them, those types of things, and it's all built into your LinkedIn profile, which is something you can't necessarily get from just managing this stuff through your Gmail or other mail account. Like, I think that relationship stuff is really important. So you could use, all viewers can use Tang's and Erin's 2 tips together, follow up with the human, and then keep track of how you followed up with them. Did everybody get a chance to talk about underused features, or was it Paula? Did you have a chance? Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything else to add about LinkedIn? And we'll start with Erin for this one.
Yeah, I guess my last tip for LinkedIn is it is the platform to interact, and I would say give more than you anticipate or ask on LinkedIn. My biggest tip is that you can give back to your peers and to people you've worked with. And in doing so, you will get back, but I would say this is a platform to really help others in need. And also, in doing so, they may then come back and give you recommendations or support you in certain ways. The recommendation is to give as well.
Okay, so Paula.
Sure. So I actually didn't end up hearing a lot of what Erin said, so I may end up repeating some of it. But I think one of the biggest things is just to remember that networking really is about giving more than getting, and that contributing to that, contributing to the LinkedIn community, to your community on LinkedIn is the #1 thing that you should be focusing on. That it's not always about getting information, that it's about giving and sharing as well. I think another important thing around LinkedIn is to have it for the right reasons. So if you're having a LinkedIn profile because somebody said that you had to have a LinkedIn profile and that recruiters were just going to find you if only you had a profile online, that's not the best reason to be on LinkedIn. And I would suggest that it might even be a little bit more harmful to have a profile that isn't complete, that you're not active on. You know, it doesn't show a lot as far as being a professional if you've got part of a profile and you haven't been online for the last 6 months doing anything with it. So if you're gonna commit to being on LinkedIn, take the time but benefit of that tool.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree that even LinkedIn itself, measures you by how active you are on there, and if you don't tend to be active on LinkedIn when people go to people search, you don't pop up in people search either. So the idea of being active on LinkedIn is so important. It's not just because someone told you had to. You have to make a commitment to work on this too. So Tang, what else would you like to add before we?
I think, well, just to summarize what we've talked about for this past hour and what's already been reiterated as well, it definitely is another tool, definitely another useful tool for job seekers and also for industry professionals already. However, at the heart of it all, it is about networking. So taking what we build online, offline. Again, it is just another tool in our toolkit when we're looking at building our online presence, our professional brand, and our network. But we do want to start to take these interactions in person as well. And LinkedIn can help with leveraging that. Just a last thing I would add is we've talked a lot about LinkedIn as a website itself. Something that I'll draw your attention to too is keep in mind the mobile apps that they have. So if you do have a smartphone and you're quite active on your smartphone, consider downloading the LinkedIn app if you have not already, so that you can get push notifications when you do start to get good leads or good contacts reaching out to you. They do also have a app called Connected as well, and this is a really useful app that I would suggest downloading too. So both Paula, Arent, and Christine, we've all emphasized the importance of networking, and with this Connected app, you'll start to get basically those newsfeed items from your contacts that you might sometimes miss if you're not on LinkedIn 24/7, because we're not on there 24/7. But if you want to find out, well, who's having a work anniversary, or maybe whose birthday is it, things like that, where they allow you to touch base with someone quickly, light touch. But those are those types of light touch interactions that you want to do to be able to stay in touch with your network on a long-term basis. Just sending that, oh, congrats on your new job, or a happy birthday. These are all very light touch things that you can do to keep yourself top of mind for the contacts that you have. So I definitely suggest downloading the Connected app as well, and you can just start to flip through to see those updates that you may have missed on the LinkedIn website itself. And as well, there is a job search app too, where you can set the parameters for yourselves, and based on location or those keywords you input, LinkedIn will start to push notifications when a job that meets those parameters comes up in their database. So the LinkedIn app, the Connected app, the job search app, those are all apps that I would suggest. LinkedIn to begin with, if you really had to choose one, and then Connected next if you were trying to prioritize those.
Okay, so I want to thank all of you for joining us. I think there's been lots of great advice and tips on how to make the most of LinkedIn, and definitely reminding people to fill out their profiles. Thanks again, and we'll just stop the broadcast here, and I'll chat with you some more. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.